Good evening, everybody, and welcome to, I can't believe that this is the 12th week. 12 weeks of Hathor hosts, 3 months. How have we got this far? Isn't that amazing? So here we are. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us and for joining me. Happy birthday. I am delighted to have Jacqueline join us this evening. I'm hoping she can. Yeah, she's there. So Jacqueline, you need to send me a request or I will try and find you. Yes, I'm sending you a request. So let's see, hopefully this. I'm so excited about tonight because Jacqueline is amazing. There she is.
It worked. I'm so excited.
I am too. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome.
Oh, hi, thanks. Is the sound okay?
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely
Great.
perfect. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Lovely. What an absolute treat to have you on my in my lair. Sorry, on my on my sarcophagus-shaped sofa.
Lovely.
It's so lovely to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to do this. Instagram, we're a bit strict about time, so we get an hour. We're going to jump straight on in, if that's good with you.
Okay.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. So as a kid, you moved around a fair amount. And then when you were 14, you settled in Kingston, Ontario. And you were quite involved in school plays, directing and theatre. You knew from quite an early age, didn't you, that theatre or performing was for you?
Yes. 3 years old, seeing, movies, I immediately started dancing around the living room and said, that's me. I want to be Shirley Temple.
And do you remember specifically what it was about Shirley Temple that made you go, oh, I love that?
She was little like me. And I guess at that time, being one of 8 kids, I wanted to spin around in the living room and have everybody look at me and clap because there was it was quite competitive at that age. So yeah, and it was just, it was magical to me. I absolutely adored Hollywood musicals. I adored them. And so even watching like the Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly and, Singing in the Rain, all these, I was always absolutely transported, and that's what I wanted to do.
Well, you carried on because after school you went to university and you got a BFA Honours in Theatre from York University. Yeah. And then you had an apprenticeship at the very prestigious Shaw Festival. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what that was like?
Sure. Well, there's 2 absolutely massive theatre festivals in Canada. And one, of course, is Stratford Festival, and the other one is the Shaw Festival. And so my whole cohort from university all auditioned, and it was an absolute nightmare to get a spot. You couldn't sign up for a particular time. You actually had to be ready for about 8 hours, sitting in a hallway, doing your stretches, hoping that they would call you in, and then perform a monologue and just get ready to take some direction and see what would happen. So of course I'd come from, theater school. So I'm there in my black stretchy clothing and sitting there meditating and doing my stretches all day long. And then I go in and the great Christopher Newton is there and I do this monologue, and I was very, very emotional. And I considered at one point standing on a chair and then falling from the chair, like in the moment. I'm like improvising this. And so after I did the monologue, it went quite well, but I actually said, I almost stood on the chair and then tumbled to the floor. And he said, well, I'm so glad you didn't. And what are you doing in April? And I was like, oh, okay. And so off I went to the Shaw Festival immediately on graduation. And it was the best discipline, the best way to start an acting career because it was 8 shows a week. Yeah. And I was understudying 3 plays, leads in all of these plays, playing some smaller roles, and then understudying these massive parts. And it was just the best experience. Very hard, and we were all living like, kind of like university students in a way. Some of the grand performers who'd been there for years had beautiful homes. I was one of the people who was pitched in with a roommate in this dodgy little cottage that had so many problems that nobody was going to fix until one day, fortunately, Christopher Newton heard me say that there was stuff backing up onto the lawn, and there was one door in the little house we couldn't even open. It was swollen shut. So immediately he sends the troops. And anyway, so just on a personal level, just being around some of the performers that I had admired for my whole university career, and then actually working with them, I would make notes, and it was fabulous. Yeah.
And as you said, it's the best training because there's something also about getting that show fitness that you do 8 shows a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a fitness that you can't really learn. It's something that you can't teach in a way because nothing prepares you for 8 shows a week other than 8 shows a week.
Right. Yeah. You have to be ready every day.
How long were you there at the shore?
Oh, I guess it was 6 months, something like that.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Well, upon your departure, you not only decide, well, I'm going to carry on acting, you form your own production company called Pyramid Productions. And
That's
the
right.
goddess in me is wondering why you chose pyramids.
Well, you know, it's kind of a full circle thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have always been interested in Egypt, in metaphysics, and I was debating whether to call it something like the camel's eye, or, you know, and I know, right? All these choices I could have made that would not have helped. But yeah, and so I just thought pyramid because it just was so powerful, and it had a metaphysical element to it as well. So the structure is there, but also the spirit is there. I've never said that before, but that's exactly why I called it that.
And was it a happy time for you? Because you were writing and directing and acting in plays that you were producing, which is amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The very first show that I did, I had called my university professor, Ron Singer, who had been a big influence on me. And I said, you know, I want to direct a play, and what can you suggest? And he said, you know, there's this author that isn't really performed enough. His name is Tom Walmsley. And so I started looking at his works, and I chose to direct this very dark, cool play called The Jones Boy, about these young heroin addicts, actually. And it was very hard to find. Oh, right, exactly. And it was very hard to find Tom Walmsley. He just kind of dipped under the radar. And eventually I tracked him down, and I said, you know, obviously I want to pay what your rate is, but I can't find any information. And he said, well, I have to kind of meet you and know if I want to give you the rights to my play. And so we met, and I asked him, would he consider playing one of the characters in the play, The Trick? Yeah. So it was all young people. So me and my peers, I was directing like my age, kind of early 20s. And then Tom, apparently I asked him the question that he had just promised himself he would only answer one way. And he said, no, I can't possibly do it. And I said, why? Are you scared? And he was like, okay, I'll do it. Because he had just said to himself, I'm never going to say I'm scared to do something. And because he was kind of an underground cult figure, really, it became a hit. Like, there were lineups around the block. It was incredibly well reviewed. It was really, really wonderful. And then I got hired to direct other shows in town. And after that, I did a production of The Wool Gatherer that I acted in. And it was one of the best experiences of my life, acting in that show.
Throughout all of this time, you're still writing. I wanted to chat about the writing a little bit, actually, because it's a strand that goes right through your life. How did you know you could write? I mean, have you always written? Well, you know,
I've always written poetry, and that doesn't mean that I have the capacity to be a published poet. Like, I had a very accomplished writer read my poetry once and said, you haven't read a lot of poetry yourself, have you? But I was constantly writing, and I was also doing automatic writing, where I've always had a bit of a sleep disorder throughout my life. And when I was in university, I would be kind of inhabited by an idea, and I would always have paper and pen right next to the bed, and I would write it without opening my eyes.
Yeah.
And then in the morning I would wake up and I'd see what I'd written. And it was just, some of these ideas were just things that I really wanted to pursue. So I was always just kind of chicken scratching. I wrote a play that did very well at a fringe festival in Toronto. But then it was when I was in Los Angeles, years and years later, that someone asked me to write a movie, and had seen me write some other like articles and that kind of thing. And I worked a little bit in PR. So I was writing, but not necessarily writing very seriously or devotedly until I was living in LA.
Yeah. So after this, during this time, you were working for Necessary Angel in Toronto, and also Buddies in Bad Times. Such a great name.
Yeah.
And it was sort of around about this time that you got your first on-screen role,
Yeah.
didn't you? And Adam McGowan's speaking parts.
Yeah.
Amazing director. What do
Yes.
you remember from that time and how you felt?
Oh, I remember everything about it, from the audition and everything. I was the only person there at the audition.
Yeah.
I think the reason he called me in is because I had done a university film and the cinematographer was being considered. And so I think that's how Adam saw me and brought me in. I've never confirmed that with him,
Yeah.
but I loved the audition. It was very collaborative. He was directing me, and I was playing a very young bride who's very naive and is being interviewed by quite an awkward woman who doesn't believe in love or marriage. So it gets a bit, I'm in my sweet little wedding dress, expecting to do a cute little. And the thing about it was the set was incredible. All of the people working on the show were incredible. Adam's crew was like a family.
Yeah.
But I'm there sitting on a sofa in this giant wedding dress, and I'm doing this scene, and I know that if I were on stage, which was my norm, people would be laughing. So people aren't laughing, and so I'm kind of bumping internally, right? I'm just turning the dial and still anticipate, like, where's my reaction or whatever? And then they would say cut, and then everybody would laugh.
Oh.
And it was just such a funny, it's like, oh yeah, it's a movie.
Yeah.
You can't laugh. But it actually helped me because I just kept turning the dial. I'm like, where is it? Where's the response? Where's the response? And I've always kind of thought of film and TV in a way as a live performance, because you do have the live people there and you are still working in communication and communion and that connection.
Yeah.
So it was a great way to start, and like just wonderful people. Yeah.
And there's
and
nothing nicer when you're on a set or into filming something and you have that, you sort of sense that thing behind the monitors where everybody's like, when you're meant to be funny, of course, it's devastating when you're not meant to be funny. So after a stint in New York and then a little bit of time in Toronto, all the time you're working, you suddenly decide, I'm going to go to LA.
Yeah.
As many actors do, and you spend the next 8 years in LA. That's quite a long time.
Yeah.
How did you find LA?
Well, it actually kind of killed my career. I really shouldn't have stayed. I shouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
But I just felt like in Toronto I was working very regularly, and I felt like I'd kind of hit a bit of a ceiling where I wasn't the lead of a series, but I was just kind of doing good guest roles that weren't it just sort of felt like I was on a treadmill. So I thought, well, I want to change. And so I'm going to go west, and I'm either going to go to Vancouver where I have family and it's a big industry hotspot too, or I'm going to go to LA. And my boyfriend at the time and I decided, okay, let's just go to LA.
Yeah.
So I go down, and honestly, there were a couple of very important career changing opportunities that got fouled because I went to LA.
Same
Really?
here.
Really?
Well, it's
Gosh,
interesting because you had said in an interview, and I've actually underlined this here, because you said it's not really a place to go to unless invited. And that really resonated with me, because I think obviously to go and visit, great. But there is definitely some merit in that. I think some people go, have an extraordinary time, have an instantly kind of successful career there, and other people take a slightly more scenic route to the top of the mountain, and that was certainly my experience as well. I come from South Africa. I flown halfway across the world alone, got off a plane, and then was like, oh god, now what?
How brave of you. Oh my god.
Well, I would never do it now. I mean, I think ignorance is bliss. I was 24, I was like, woohoo, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Now I'd be like, I don't know how I did it.
Right. And the reason I said that what you quoted there is because it's almost like you arrive to a very big house and it has a very thick door. Yeah. And you can knock on that door, but they're inside at a party and they can't hear you. So you want to go there when the door's already open. And I, know people who have been called down. It's like, we have something we want to look at you for. Please come. We set you up. you're staying at your manager's house or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I was like sleeping on a friend's sofa the first couple of weeks and, trying to buy a car. And that was just such a nightmare. And it was just crazy. And I was insecure. I realized when I got to LA that there are stars and there are nobodies. Mm-hmm. And there's really not a lot in between. And some people meet that kind of circumstance and they say, oh, let me at him. I'm going to just, I'm going to make that casting director lift her head up from the desk. Because you could walk in for, prelim casting and they'd literally be looking down and wouldn't bother even to look up.
Yeah.
So for me, in Toronto, I had gotten used to, when I went into a casting, I was expected and people were very welcoming. And I'd go down to LA like, ta-da. And they'd be like, sorry, I'm looking, I'm eating my lunch, or you know what I mean? And so it really didn't work for me very, very easily. But I kept coming back to Canada to work. Yeah. And then I got into more theater again down there, and I got very serious about writing as well.
Well, I was going to say, so, it was hardly, you weren't sort of sitting around doing nothing. You were being very creative, and you were weirdly going back home to work.
Yes. Is,
kind of a sign. They're like, whoa, red flag.
Yeah, I know, right?
But you joined a theatre company where you directed, you produced, you were on the board, called Company of Angels. I was looking at their site yesterday. It looks like a really cool company.
Yeah, they've been around forever. I think Leonard Nimoy was one of the founding members, actually.
Really?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, because I was trying to find out more about the history of it, and either I couldn't see it, or maybe perhaps during COVID they've taken it down for other notices at the moment.
Sure.
But during this time, you end up winning a Drama Log Award for Best Director for a play called Zastrozzi. Is that correct?
Zastrozzi. Yeah.
Zastrozzi.
Zastrozzi. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I was like, I've never heard of this play. So I was Googling. I was like, oh, well, I can see why you did this. Not. It's based on a novel from 1810, written in the 70s by a Canadian playwright. Like, what made you pick this play?
Right. And the thing is, having directed it, I should have read the novel, but I didn't. It's George F. Walker. I absolutely love his writing. And I find that there's something very Canadian about him because he's got this strange sense of humor. Like, the play is quite dark. It's very sexy, and there's lots of fighting and there's lots of clashes, but it's hilarious. And I really wanted to play Matilda, who was a swashbuckling female pirate type chick, basically. Yes. And she has this very contentious relationship with this very sexy man named Zastrozzi, who's just like this ultimate ne'er-do-well in Europe. And I really wanted to play that character, and I thought, well, I'm going to produce this play, but I didn't feel like I could I didn't feel like a director from somewhere other than Canada would get the sensibility quite right away, because it is so weird. And I don't know why I find it typically Canadian. Maybe it's just me, I just relate to it. So I thought, well, I'll direct it. And it was so fun. It was so fun. I had music written for it, gorgeous, like operatic music. I did this very risky thing, which I felt naughty doing it, because in a way I was adding a little piece of writing at the beginning, but I did like a dumb show at the beginning.
Right.
I wanted to get the American audience primed for what they were going to see, because I felt like it's going to be too strange for them. So I had a dance choreographed that basically introduced everything that happens in the play in a dance. Brilliant. Where people are spinning and they're dying and falling, and it was a really cool dance. The music was great. The sword fighting was incredible. Amazing. And it was a really good experience.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And after 8 years in Los Angeles, you decide to head to Vancouver, where you ended up settling.
Yeah.
And around about that time, you auditioned for a little show called Stargate SG-1. And of course, as we all know, you end up playing the recurring role of the fellow goddess Nirti.
Yes.
Nirti. Tell us about your audition.
Well, I think I'd only been in Vancouver for maybe a week. Wow. And yeah, I think so. It was February. I think so. And my agent sent me this audition, an agent that I had signed with when I was up in Canada, maybe 6 months previous. I was doing a movie in Calgary or Edmonton.
Yeah.
My Toronto agent said, I think you should meet Jamie Levitt. And so I took a trip to Vancouver, and she said, well, whenever you come up here, I'll sign you. And then within 6 months, I ended up moving up there. So I had an agent. She sent me the audition, and I said, Stargate, that's Brad Wright's show. Brad Wright is an old friend, and normally I would have lunch with him whenever I was in Vancouver, but I hadn't seen him yet.
Right.
So I phoned him, and I said, Brad, guess whose show I'm going to come in and audition for tomorrow? And he said, I know.
Did that make it worse or easier?
I was nervous, actually.
Yeah.
I was nervous. I mean, I was excited, and I thought this is going to be fun. But being a typical actress, I just looked at the lines, and I was like, there's not enough lines here. I want more lines.
I'm only in 3 bits.
Yeah. So I wasn't like, oh, let me at it. I was like, oh, yeah, this looks interesting.
Yeah.
And so I went in, and it was, I don't think Brad was there at the beginning. It was the prelim call, and there were probably 15 actresses there. Mm. And I got a sense that it was a big deal when I got there, because these actresses were extremely focused and determined and nervous and all this. And I was like, oh, okay, I haven't seen this show. I should probably have tried to catch an episode somehow. Anyway, so I did the audition. I got a call back. And so when I went into the call back, of course, everybody's there. Yeah. And I did the scene once, and I'd been told it's got a bit of a Shakespearean kind of auteur to it, So I had this sort of heightened reality, but I was probably a little bit too grand. And so Brad actually walked me down the hall, and he said, just, a little looser, a little, and I, at the callback, there were 2 other actresses.
Yeah.
So and then I booked it, and then getting to the set and doing the makeup test, I mean, it just got more and more fun. Like every single step was better and better and better.
Well, that's my next question. It was going to be like, what did you feel when you saw the actual Stargate for the first time? Because I was just like, I can't believe it,
Yeah.
And then also your costumes. What was your? I mean, I know what I thought when I first saw my costume, because my costume changed. Mine originally was like a sort of wire hanger, like a
piece of dental floss.
Yeah, dental floss, and I was like, anyway, changed. But so yours was not quite like that. What did you think when you?
Well, I still remember walking into the wardrobe room and just feeling so at home, because it was like a major theater production wardrobe facility where they're doing costume design from scratch. They're building these incredible pieces. They do them in muslin first, just like you would do at Shaw or Stratford. And I was just like, oh God, this is home. And of course, Christina McQuarrie is so gifted.
Oh,
and my
absolutely.
First thing that she did was show me this square of fabric that was encrusted in semi-precious stones. And she told me that this piece that was about maybe 15 inches by 10 inches, she said, this cost $400. And this is just going to go in the front of your bodice or whatever. And I just absolutely loved it. Now, of course, when I did Metamorphosis, I mean, it kind of got less and less clothing, I think is what happened. I mean, I stopped wearing something on my head. I had more boobs showing. It just became a bit showier and shorter.
You've got it, flaunt it, and you got it.
It was fun. Yeah, I loved every single costume, and right through to Continuum. Continuum, the gown was so beautiful for that movie that when they fitted me in the muslin, the plain cotton version of it, I asked if I could have it. It was so gorgeous. And then they laughed. And because I hadn't put it together that, of course, they deconstruct the muslin to use it as the pattern. It's like, well, okay. But yeah, such beautiful stuff. Yeah, the Stargate was incredible. And then the makeup test. And then they presented me to Rick to show my makeup so he could approve it.
Yeah.
And he just, he was sitting in his cast chair, and I was like, scooted out in front of him and kind of turned this way and that. And he was like, beautiful. Just beautiful.
Perfection.
I was like, okay, I like it here. This is
That's
good.
better than my first time meeting him, because I was like,
Aw.
they couldn't decide if they wanted to use my hair. They wanted her to have red hair, which I have, and they
Yeah.
couldn't decide if it should be a wig or not. So they had done like half my head of hair. I had no makeup on,
Oh
and I
my
was in
God.
a dressing gown, you know, kind of in a
Oh.
robe, sort of waiting for my costume. And I was just literally taking a bite of a bagel, and I heard this voice behind me go, "Hey, welcome!" And I was like, you know, not my finest hour.
Oh my God. And you know what was funny? Like the Mendy, they did all this painting on my hands and
Yeah.
it took forever. They had this beautiful, authentic artist to do it. It took, like 2 hours or something to do it. And then I had to repaint over it with a special pen during the interim days when I was off set. And then they realized that it was taking so long that ultimately they just got a stencil and just kind of spray painted it on. It was like, okay, okay.
But
Yeah,
now you
that
know how
works.
to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Rick, he had his very own special way of calling Newty. Can you tell
Oh,
us
he
what that
did.
is?
Yes, he enjoyed calling me dirty, flirty, nerdy.
But
Yeah,
he
and
called her
generally he would
nerdy,
call me
right?
nerdy. Yeah, nerdy.
Dirty, flirty,
Uh,
nerdy.
dirty, flirty, nerdy. Oh my God, so
Well, she
good.
was quite a piece of work, old
Yeah.
nerdy.
Oh
How
yeah.
how did you prepare to play that? Um,
Well, I looked up, some of the Egyptian background and,
mhm.
you know, but really it was more just breaking it down like it was any other show. Like
Yeah.
clearly they were kind of departing from some historical records of this kind of figure, but it was more the relationships and what does she want and what's her obstacle and what's she willing to do to
Mhm.
get what she wants and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of more the work that I did. And then you put
Right.
the costume on and you're like, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah,
right
exactly.
here. Yeah.
It it informs a lot of the acting. Um,
Yeah.
Now, we know that Rick and some of the crew are very partial to a practical joke. So I was wondering if there were any kind of practical jokes during your time on set, or if you were perhaps the prankster yourself.
No, actually, the funniest thing was a story that I've told at conventions, and it was the dog biscuits. The dog biscuits
The
that they would
what?
have on the craft, they had dog biscuits on the craft services table for people's dogs.
Oh,
Okay. But Michael Shanks and Rick would eat these things, I think, as kind of dares to each other. So they would eat them just to kind of
that
show
explains
off
a
that,
lot.
doesn't it? And at one point, I remember right before they called action, Rick
Yeah.
said, "Guess what's in my pocket?" And I said, "A dog biscuit." And he was like, "How did you know?" kind of thing. It was very silly. But yeah, dog biscuits. Constantly eating them too, like not just one. It was crazy. Like they were cookies. It was so weird. Yeah.
Well, yes, that does. As I said, that explains quite a bit, I think.
Yeah.
um,
I also remember in Metamorphosis, just, of course, I'm kind of being lifted and strangled, and my
yeah.
feet are dangling like the Wicked Witch. And I was
How
kind
did
of
they
hung
do
up.
that, by the way?
Yeah,
Were you
that's
actually hoisted up?
I was kind of hanging onto a bar, like it was very unattractive from the waist up, but they just needed to see the feet.
Right.
So it was quite uncomfortable and quite awkward, but of course, but it worked, right? It was
Yeah.
very practical. As I recall, it was two giant guys who kind of lifted me up on a bar, and I was hanging over the bar. It was
Ah, the glamour. The
yeah,
glamour.
exactly, exactly. And Rick had to like go back to LA, like it was like quick, 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 let's go, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. But anyway, it was great.
I know you and I have talked a bit when we've been together at conventions and things, like the amazing, convivial, warm, fantastic
Oh,
atmosphere on the set.
oh
Did
yeah.
you pick up on that right away?
Immediately. But it's just, it's like these people are so fun.
Yeah.
Like obviously Brad's an old friend. I love him. I love all of the people on the production side. And then you've got directors like Martin Wood and Peter DeLuise, and they're just so relaxed and so just making the most of the humanity of it. Like you're in this very contrived sci-fi circumstance, but they're just really talking about the relationships
Yeah.
and having fun, and never over directing at all. Like not like just pretty much move here, do that, and they just trust you to do your part.
Yeah.
So and every single experience with both of those guys, like Martin Wood directed Fair Game, and then I guess Peter was Metamorphosis and Rite of Passage, I believe, and then Martin was Continuum, and then I've worked with both of them on other shows.
I know, I'm getting to that.
Okay, and it's consistent, the sets that they're on. That's how they are, and it really kind of trickles down.
It was so lovely when I chatted to Joe Malozzi. He said that Brad has always had this policy of like just not employing people who are assholes, just like really nice people. It does make a difference, because when you're together 14, 15, 16, 17 hours a day, for a lot of the year, you kind of have to have people who are going to muck in and be like, yeah, sure, okay, I've got to be hoisted up by my feet or my waist or whatever, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you've got the cast who are so fun, like 201, funny, like talented, cool, you know, kind. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, so that they really made it welcoming, made it so much easier than, you know. And then, of course, I entered with like Vincent Cristejo and Ron Halder as my sort of cohorts of gods. And they were just lovely, lovely people. I mean, Vince was just so priceless, and he was in the most stiff and uncompromising costume. He couldn't sit down. They had to do exactly what they would have done had he really existed in the time where he was supposed to come from. They would have had to put a little wooden stool up the back of his coat for him to lean on, and that's what he had to do. They had to put a little board up his butt so he could lean on it, because he couldn't sit, you know.
Now in the episode Rite of Passage, Nirti is looking for the perfect host to create this sort of perfect human, and has been found out to be doing some pretty reprehensible things to children.
Poor Cassandra.
Yeah, how did you, like, as a mum, how did you kind of approach that aspect of her?
Well, I wasn't a mum yet, and that probably was helpful.
Yeah.
But you know, the fun thing about Nirti is she's a scientist. So everything is in the pursuit of science, you know. So, right. You just have to break eggs to make an omelet. So it was really that. It's like, you know, it's for the betterment, and maybe it's going to be inconvenient for some people who could consider themselves victims, but really they're playing a very important role, and it's my job to keep working on them until they get to where we all need them to be.
People say we're evil, Jacqueline, but I say misunderstood, really.
That's right.
Not at all. We'll talk privately. Now, in Metamorphosis, you had achieved something that very, very few actors ever get to do, and particularly in something like this fantastic franchise, where you pitched a storyline that not only got accepted, it ended up being an episode that unfortunately also saw your demise at the end of it. But tell us how that came about.
Well, I was getting quite serious into writing concepts for TV. I had a few scripts that were kind of doing some rounds, and I had put together a pitch actually for Andromeda.
Yeah.
And I'd had a meeting with Alan Eastman, and they were looking at it, and it didn't look like it was going to go forward. So I said to Brad, you know, if you're free for lunch, I have an idea. I want to pitch it to you. And he said, sure. So we sat down, we had lunch, and a big part of the concept was this DNA machine.
Yeah.
And which ultimately was in the episode. And in the pitch, don't anyone steal this, because I still want to do it. I just love the way the helix looks like a set of stairs. So I actually had characters inside the DNA ropes climbing kind of thing. Anyway, so after this meeting where I kind of gave this outline, I was not pitching that it was Nirti. It was a general kind of concept, the plot, but not with a specific character doing this work. And Brad said, there's something interesting here. I want to take it into the room and see what happens. I said, okay. So I took it into the room, and then he came back to me and he said, yeah, we like it, and it's going to mesh with some other things.
Yeah.
So we're going to combine, like James Titchener, who was editor and a co-story on it, and he did the teleplay.
Right.
He's got his stuff, and you've got your stuff, and we're going to combine them. And I really wanted to write the script, but it's one of those things. It's like you're in a TV family, and it was James's turn. And
Right.
so he was writing the script, and not just his turn, obviously, he was chosen for his merits. And then, and then I got the script and I discovered that I died. I was
You were like,
thrilled to know
wait a
that I
minute.
was doing it, but then I died, and I was like, oh man, because I wanted to do so much more damage first.
Well, as I say, you died, but actually you're an alien, and so
Right.
there's no real death. I mean, I've been trotting that one out for 25
Exactly.
years about my
Yeah.
character. I'm like, did she die?
Yes.
You didn't really see the body. Yes,
Right.
hurtled over the edge, but
Exactly.
Did you have a sense during the third season, and then obviously you came back after that, but like, did you have a sense, because when I did it, it was the first season and quite new still.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a sense of how popular the show was then?
When I first did it, I had no idea. But I mean, I recognized, because, the sets and everything and the costumes and the people, I mean, it was all big. So, they don't throw, I mean, of course they actually do throw a lot of money at things that aren't great or popular. But this one, I kind of got a hint that I was in something substantial. And then when I went to my first convention, I couldn't even freaking believe it.
You have to tell this story for those who don't know, because your first convention experience is like, frankly, I think it's the way we should all arrive at conventions. So please do tell the story.
It's one of my favorite but most terrifying memories, where I'm so excited, and off I go to Blackpool, England, to do this convention. And I'm in a bus with all of these awesome performers, some of whom I know quite well and a couple that I don't know really. And we're put into a green room. And all I know is that there is this absolutely gigantic, like airplane hangar sized venue that's on the other side. And I can hear thousands of people. And the organizer says, well, don't worry. Everyone's just going to stride out on stage and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm going to be signing tomorrow at such and such time. And that's all you have to do. And I was like, okay, I guess I can do that. And then he turns to me and he says, except you're not going to do that, because you're the surprise guest. So we're going to put you into a sarcophagus with a live mic that's at the back of the stage. And the stage was incredible, with an actual, like, life-sized Stargate that had effects and everything. And they had these two huge Jaffa in full costume. I hadn't even seen them yet. I hadn't seen the front of house. They just said this sarcophagus is going to be pushed through the Stargate with a lot of smoke and light effects. Then the top is going to be slid off, and two Jaffa are going to help you out, and then you're going to speak. And I was like, I'm not prepared. I got here 5 minutes ago. So they take me backstage. They open the top of the sarcophagus. I lie down in my suit. I've got this live mic next to me. They start pushing it through. They have all of the Stargate effects, and there's smoke and everything, and the sound of stones sliding as the top slides off, and these two gigantic men reach down to me, and I think no one is going to recognize me.
Right. Or what if there's no one there? You're like,
what if there's no one there? They haven't announced me. They haven't said my name on any of the promotion. Nothing. I feel like this is going to be such a disaster. They stand me up, and the crowd goes crazy. They all recognized me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'd already heard the other actors coming out, and they're basically doing comedy routines. So I felt like, okay, I have to actually say more than, oh, hi, I'm here.
Yeah.
So, I said, I was jet lagged when I got into this thing, but there's a minibar in there, and it is a sarcophagus, and now I feel quite fresh,
Exactly. And
so
there is. I had it installed. You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. And it was a great experience. Oh my God. And it was massive, massive, massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many thousands of fans.
Oh, amazing. I mean, it's like the best story ever, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm very looking at the time. We're going to run out of time for a change. So I'm going to whip through. Life post Stargate, you have kept really, really busy. You're a very much in-demand voiceover actor. You do voiceovers and voice actor. You're currently voicing Captain Marvel, which is amazing. Of course you're Captain Marvel.
Yeah, I love it. It's fun.
And straight after Stargate, you did a sort of slew of shows, Smallville, Bionic Woman. I mean, these are just a few of the highlights. You worked with the lovely Tim Daly in Wilder Days and with the
Yeah.
great late Peter Falk.
Yes.
And then you were writing simultaneously. And in 2003, you wrote and directed a short film called 50 Questions, which I was so delighted to find because it's great.
You actually found it.
I
Oh my
found it.
goodness.
There is
Wow.
an interview of you on YouTube. And the first part of the interview is you chatting to this guy, and then you watch the film.
Oh my
And
goodness.
the whole film is on it. So it's great.
Oh.
I
Well,
highly recommend it, everyone.
Thanks. Well, that was a program called Crazy Eights
Sorry,
where
that's my
they,
stomach rumbling.
what's that?
That was my stomach rumbling, in case anyone heard that. Sorry, I don't know why.
Yeah, and I'm sweating. It's like really hot. I've had to
Oh, I know,
close
me
everything
too.
up because they're building a house next door.
Right.
So I've just closed everything up. Anyway, yeah, so there's a program in Vancouver called Crazy Eights where it's a competitive program and people kind of pitch as if you're pitching to a production company, but it's a very limited thing. You have a concept, you can have a complete script or not, but then once you're approved, you're given 8 days and a certain amount of money, a small pot of money, but everything has to be done in this very, very short time frame. So I had a script that I had written it all in one go. I'd gone for a walk and I had an idea, and so I phoned my own answering machine and I spoke the script into the answering machine, and it's almost verbatim what we shot.
Yeah.
Like it was just one of those things where I'm like, this is just like falling off a log. I really like that script. And yeah, so we had a really good time shooting it. And it's one of those community builders in Vancouver where everybody goes to the theater and there's 8 directors and they show their shows, and then it gets, it kind of goes on airplanes and it has different venues. I think it was distributed in Europe at some point. But just all in all, a fabulous, fabulous community kind of experience with that one.
And did that cement your desire to direct? I mean, is directing something you'd like to move into more? Or is the love for acting still as strong?
Well, in fact, directing was really where I was going. And I had a project I was writing and directing, and it had massive support. A lot of development money went into it. And I won just so much money to make this movie. And ultimately, the Canadian government Telefilm, which is kind of the funding body, asked me to make a different movie. But I'd been working on this one for 5 years, and I became kind of depressed actually after that. I thought, I know I've got this unconventional script, but I'd been a script analyst for so long, and I would be one of the people who would read scripts and tell the government or tell the production company, this is probably the market for this piece, etc. So I knew that my script was unusual on the page, and that it would be scrutinized for whether it could be commercial or not, but I was very committed to it, and I felt like it was going to be one of those it was unique, and that it would have a better chance of doing well instead of trying to be a little teeny version of a Hollywood movie. And when that didn't end up going forward, then I had my 2 boys, and I was like, I don't want to fight in that arena right now. I'm going to give all my creative energy to raising my kids, which weirdly I thought was going to be easy. It's not easy.
And now they're
I don't know why.
Right?
Yes, 14 and 15. Yes.
Mama.
Yeah. So really, at that time, once I had the boys, I was writing for hire. I was doing some ghost writing scripts that will never see my name on them, but I had, scenes that I can watch and enjoy and know that I wrote them, and I'd write for hire. But I just didn't feel like I could put news stories out at that time. And I feel now that my kids are feeding themselves more easily, and I can kind of look the other way. I feel like I can come back to writing, even though it's been such a long break. And directing is one of those things where I've always had a lot of confidence with directing, but I would rather, if I can, come up with, say, a TV concept, work on a TV concept, and begin directing with TV first, because then you're in a family setting and you're in a place that you can become very comfortable, and you have a group that you work with. So that's kind of still in the back of my mind. And I can't...
You need to come up with a TV concept for us.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. And I love acting so much. And because I have been quite overwhelmed with work and being a parent at the same time, I find it easier to show up, not easier, but just preferable to show up on set where someone else makes my lunch and they tell me what I'm going to say, and you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I'm just,
absolutely.
yeah, and I'm doing work that I love. I love every minute of it.
Yeah.
And voice work, I'm doing a lot of coronavirus
Hmm.
voiceovers right
Yeah,
now. The
me too.
reassuring, yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Yeah. And it's just sort of, as you said, it's not it's creative, but you're not having to drive it yourself. It just gives you an
Yeah.
opportunity to sit back and appreciate the work. Um, so getting back to your
Are you
acting,
frozen?
you then had a
Hello,
lovely
hello.
recurring role on The L Word,
Yes.
playing Sandra Houston, who was a
Yes.
talk show host. Is that right?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
that part was an absolute scream. It was,
Dream.
oh, it was so fun. Oh, I just absolutely loved it. My job was I was basically a co-host with one of the regular characters, Alice,
Mm,
and she comes out on the show. I guess first she's a guest, and she
right.
comes on the show thinking that she's going to be talking about her career, but in fact, she's there as a cultural fit. Like
Right.
we need a gay person on the show. And she's
Yeah.
kind of like, you want me to be gay, but not too gay? Like, what are we talking here? And
I loved
oh,
your
it
movie.
was
You're like,
so
happy
fun.
gay.
Yeah, yeah. Not angry gay, but
Happy gay.
yeah, it was so fun. And again, another really good set with wonderful people. A lot of women,
Mm,
obviously, like 90% women, although Bob Ashman, who was a friend who I'd worked with previously, he also directed one or maybe even two of the episodes I did.
yeah.
But just being in the company of these incredible performers. Jennifer Beals is a fabulous actress,
Yeah.
and Pam Grier was in it. And I mean,
Mm.
just fabulous. Yeah,
And so great to have so many women on
very
set, and
much.
also the whole creative team, being women. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
go
the
girl.
crew, tons of the crew, like
Yeah.
just so unusual at the time and becoming, more kind of standard, but very, very unique at the time, and just loved it.
Yeah. You followed that by two more recurring roles in Spooksville and then the hugely popular Arrow, playing another TV host. So maybe there's
Yes.
something in there for you. How was your time on Arrow?
Well, Arrow was actually frustrating because I was always on TV. I wanted
Yeah.
to jump out of the TV. I was basically always, like behind the action, and people would turn around and say, "What?" And my character would be talking about the Green Arrow, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'd be debating with my people on my set. So I didn't get to work with any of the actors. I didn't get to like climb out of the TV and, move around. I
Yeah.
was a talking head. So I was like, meh. And the other thing about that, of course, I was delighted to do Arrow, but it meant that I couldn't be featured in any of the Arrowverse shows. I
That's
couldn't
hard.
audition, and there were several,
Yeah.
all shooting in Vancouver. I couldn't even audition.
They
So in a
established.
way, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a
Kept
way, I
you on
was
the
sort of
spot.
like a genie in a bottle. I couldn't get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good analogy. In 2016, you won the prestigious Leo Award for your brilliant performance, and I managed to
Oh,
find
thank
that
you.
too, which I'm so delighted for.
Oh,
Or
ties that
delighted at.
bind.
Yeah. So I think it's called Detective McLean. Depending on where you watch it in the world, it seems to be. I couldn't find it for the longest time, but I did find it through the University of YouTube A. Ties that bind. You won the Leo for best guest star performance, and you play a woman who is being abused by her husband, who's suffering hideous domestic abuse, and you really had to shift your performances so beautiful and so
Thank
layered
you.
and nuanced. And I wondered uh, how you kind of, in the heat of the moment, because with film you have to do stuff over and over and over, like how you got to those really emotional places. Was it easy? Was it, how did you find that?
It was it was easy because the
Mm,
writing was good, and
yeah.
because I felt a responsibility as soon as I understood what the woman that I was playing was experiencing. I felt like it was my job to speak for every woman in her circumstance.
Hmm.
So sometimes if we are playing a character that is not super duper like us, you can still imagine being in the set situation that character is in, but also you could imagine having a friend in that situation.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just felt enormous compassion for this woman. And so it was as if you know how you can cry for yourself. Mm-hmm. You could cry for your close friend, or you could cry for a group of humanity that is suffering something. Mm-hmm. And so I immediately was there. As soon as I read it, I was just like, let me in the room. Get out of my way. Yeah. I have something to do. I have something to say about this. And Monica Mitchell is an extraordinary director, wonderful director. And I had just worked with her on another Lifetime TV movie, maybe a year or two previous. Can't remember exactly how much previous, but so I was very lucky that she was the director, because she's one of those people who doesn't tell the actor what to do, like at all, but she watches with full attention, and she's emotionally present, and she will, or at least this was my experience. So I would do a take, and then she might come up and just say, okay, this one's for you. Just do whatever you want.
Great.
And then she'd leave, and I mean, there was the concern because there's supposed to be a point of breaking down, and then you can kind of dry because you're having to do multiple takes.
Yeah.
So they ended up using a take in the final scene that I felt like I was dry, and I felt like, this is not going to be useful. And then kind of like this fire just started. Mm-hmm. And so they could feel that. So that's the take that they used. And it was a lovely set. Dion Johnstone, who was one of my experimented people in Rite of Passage, I think it was.
Yeah. Anyway,
and he's like the lead, and he was so, oh my God, after the very final take, and he just came up and he just said, thank you, and hugged me, and the director hugged me, and the producer hugged me, and everybody was so lovely.
Yeah.
And then going to the awards show was so fun.
Yeah. So how did it feel when they called your name? Was it like
It was really it was like an out of body experience. Yeah. I was really excited, but it wasn't even that I expected or didn't expect. It was just so strange because it's a very large venue with lots of lights and a stage. And my husband was so cute. He's like, she did it. She did it. And then I did my speech, which was very moving for me. And in fact, there was Peter DeLuise and Anne-Marie DeLuise who recorded the speech for me and sent it to me, which was so cool. And I remember saying in that speech that I had fallen out of love with the business, but then something woke up in me, and I fell back in love with the art. And yeah,
that's beautiful and profound.
A great thing.
And what a perfect segue, because I was going to say, talking about Peter DeLuise and Martin Wood, you followed those up. I mean, you've been working really consistently pretty much your whole career. And you did a couple of light-hearted, Christmassy Hallmark films where you were reunited with lovely Martin Wood on Where Calls the Heart and Peter DeLuise on All Summer Long. Does that make it easier when you know someone well, or when you work with people? Yeah. Oh, it's so fun. It's like being in a family, as you know, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure as like so many of the Stargate fans feel that when they reassemble at a convention. Yeah. And it's just like old home week, and there's like, oh, hey, there you are, and you hug, and you kind of fall back in step like you haven't been separated ever. And that's how it's been every single time with those guys. And we have a director in common as well. I've only discovered this when I mentioned I was interviewing you, and that's Mike Roll.
Yes.
He directed me in The Princess Switch, and he was like, oh, Jacqueline's amazing.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is so sweet. I want to see that show. I haven't seen it, so I'm gonna have to track it down. Yeah, because there's two, isn't there?
Yes, well, the second one hasn't come out yet, so coming out this year. Now, we've got like 6 minutes of questions, so I'm going to jump to questions because I only had one more question for you, which I might throw in at the end. Mm-hmm. So the first question I have is, as the two most devious Goa'ulds, do you think that you could have worked together to bring down the other system lords? Or would you have killed each other? If so, who would have won?
Ooh.
Ooh.
I definitely think we could have worked together.
Same.
Absolutely. But probably we would have also been plotting against each other at the same time.
Absolutely. I think we would have worked together until we needed one another, and then it would have become a thing of cat and mouse and like who's going to outdo who and how would
I
we
can
do
see
it.
that.
But we
Yeah.
totally could have teamed up to take them all out.
Yeah. I can see the fight to the death in whatever form that would take, but I can't see who would win. I guess we'll just have to do it one day.
Yeah, maybe not, maybe no one exactly. I think we'd have to do it one day. There's your pitch. There you go.
Yeah.
If you could live on any of the Stargate planets, what would it be, or which would it be?
Not one of the ones I blew up, I guess. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think I just take Earth.
Excellent, and take it all.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like working with Terrell Rothery in the episode Rite of Passage?
Oh, she's fantastic. And she's a
Yeah.
friend. Like every time I see her, another example where it's just like, and she's not just, I think, a lovely actress, she's a lovely person and she's a lovely woman.
Yeah.
I love the way she conducts herself and the way she is, I don't know, she's just fabulous. She's fabulous. And I really did enjoy working with her. And that said, also Colleen was incredible, who played Cassandra. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
What a talent.
Is she doing anything now? Do you know what? I mean, obviously
Well, she has been. I'm not sure exactly what she's up to now, but her band is massive, and she's such a gifted musician and singer.
Yeah.
And really great actress. I mean, I've seen her in one of the locally produced features that was a few years ago, so I'm not sure what her most current stuff is, but God, she's good. She's so good.
Yeah. So I'm going to just see if I can bring up one of these. Here's one. Did you love working with Amanda Tapping? Well, I think that's an obvious one.
Yes. The warmest,
Yeah.
loveliest person. Oh, of course.
Oh, she's just amazing. Here's another one. Who's your all-time favorite movie director and why? That's hard. In 2 minutes.
Oh my God. There's too many. I mean, I'm a big Coen Brothers fan,
Yeah.
for sure. And of course, I mean, my career started with Adam McGoyan, and very important moments in my career and life happened working with him. So he's got to be one of my favorites, and he's Canadian.
Yeah, exactly. Full circle. You were amazing as Nir T. If you were to portray another character in Stargate, who would it be and why?
Hathor.
Really?
I would freaking love it. I would love to swap, and I would just love the whole freaking thing. I think that would be super fun. Like, just show up, pretend I'm you, right? But I'm
Let's do
but
it.
I'm just
Get on that phone and be like, hey Brad, we've had an idea.
yeah.
I mean, I know the show's off the air, but hang on, we've had an idea. Do you prefer acting or writing or directing? I think we've sort of covered that a little bit.
Yes, I love them all. I mean, I started with producing, writing, and directing partly to make sure I was never waiting for the phone to ring as an actor, because that's something that can be very frustrating and challenging in an actor's career, is realizing that other people are in charge of how busy you can be. Exactly. So it was a real way to be empowered, and I have to be expressing myself in some way. So at the moment, acting is number one for me, but I'd like to get back to the others too.
Well, and you have been number one for me and for us, because believe it or not, we are almost at the end of our interview. I'm getting the countdown now. So rather than getting cut off, I just wanted to say an enormous thank you to you for taking time out of your day. I'm sorry, everyone, that we didn't get to all the questions. I see them coming up, but it's really hard. They should make these an hour and 15 minutes, which would be the perfect time. I'll just see quickly. Oh no, God, we've got 50. Is there anything that you wanted to say, Jacqueline?
I want to say thank you, and I'm absolutely loving catching up on all the interviews on YouTube. I think you're doing a beautiful job. You're so welcoming and warm, and it's fun and it's interesting. And even with all the technical glitches, like the grace and humor, I just think it's great what you're doing. And I'm so happy that I got to participate.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait till we see each other again. Hopefully Kalmar 3, 4, 5, whichever one it is next, or whenever
Let's
it is.
do it. Let's do
Chicago, or whatever.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, my friend. And I'll speak
Can't
to you
wait.
soon. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'll see you guys next week with Dan Payne. Have an awesome evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. And lots of love to you all. Bye.
Bye.